In the first tutorial of this series, I introduced you to the Canon EOS-R, and we looked at the different buttons and some of the menu items so that you can be familiar with the camera. In this second installment, we are going to set up the camera to shoot photos. So if your camera is new and you're just taking it out of the box, maybe the first thing you want to do is to set your date and time. Just press on the menu button on the back of the camera and then use the info button to navigate to the fourth wrench icon, and then use the arrow keys to go to the second item in that menu, sub menu, and then go down to date, time and zone, and also the language if you need to change and set the language. Now step number one, if you're going to be shooting in photo mode, is you want to go to the mode, and in the mode press the info button so that you toggle between shooting video and shooting photos. So you go to the photo mode, and in the photo mode you can select between fully automatic, which is the green A, and fully manual, which is at the bottom, or anything in between like flexible priority, program, shutter priority, aperture priority, and even the bulb mode. So now if you're new to photography, then you can start on either the auto or the program mode, and then for more control you can start looking at the other modes that you can use like manual. The first thing that you need to do is to disable this sensor here, because this sensor is the one that toggles between you seeing what you're shooting through the viewfinder or the LCD screen, and it can be quite annoying. So what you need to do is to go to the fourth setting, that's the wrench icon, and then look for display settings right there. That's the fourth sub menu, and then you go into there and you choose display control, and you go to manual and then choose which one you want to use. So I'll choose screen for now. The next thing you want to consider is your SD card. So the SD card goes on the side. This camera only has one SD card slot, which is unfortunate because a lot of the newer cameras have dual SD card slots for longer recording time and also for the ability to be able to back up your recording while you are shooting. But this is only one SD card, and it takes all the different types of SD cards, from the very old SD cards and then to the SDHC cards and also the SDXC card. What I would recommend is just buy the fastest card that you can afford, and that would be in the SDXC card range. The reason I would recommend that you buy the fastest card that you can afford is that if you do hybrid shooting, that means shooting photos and also doing video, the slower cards might not be able to function when you are doing high resolution 4K video. So to format your card, all you need to do is go to your menu and you go to this fourth wrench icon, and then go down to format card, and then you have the option to format your card. Now you can just do a general format, but as you can see on the screen, you also have something called low level format, and you can either have that ticked on or off by pressing the trash can button on the back of your camera like this. The name low level format is a bit deceiving because when you do a low level format, you're actually doing a more thorough format of your card. So once you're done with the formatting and everything, the next thing you want to do is to decide on the image format, and you're going to be choosing between either JPEG, RAW, or shooting in both JPEG and RAW. And when you're shooting in RAW, this is best for editing because it retains maximum detail, but it requires processing before use, so you can't share RAW files with clients. JPEGs are ready for immediate use and are ideal for quick sharing. If you decide to shoot in both formats, like sometimes I do, it's going to take more storage space. For you to choose what you're going to be shooting in, all you need to do is go into your menu and navigate using the info button to this first tab, And the first sub-menu, first item, tells you about the image quality. So you can use your front dial to choose between no RAW shooting, so you're just shooting in JPEG, or you can shoot in RAW, or you can shoot in a smaller version of RAW called C-RAW. And then you can use your navigation keys at the back of the camera to choose what JPEG format you want, from no JPEG to the large, and then all the way to the smallest JPEG file. I would just choose the largest JPEG file, and then for RAW, I'll just choose RAW. So I usually shoot both RAW and JPEG because sometimes I will shoot something and I need to share some of those photos quickly without processing, and then have some of those photos processed. It takes up more space on my card. The quality that you're going to choose is up to you and your workflow. Let's go back to this main menu. I generally disable dual pixel RAW because for most people you won't use it. It offers extra editing flexibility, but it's really not necessary for most situations. The next thing we want to set is our cropping or aspect ratio, and this is a full frame camera, so I would just choose full. But sometimes I choose 16:9 if I'm going to be shooting photos that I want to use in video. That helps me frame those photos properly for video. The next thing you might want to change is how long the preview lasts on your screen when you take a photo. I'll put it at 4 seconds. And then this last item here is very important: release shutter without card. I generally disable it, and what this does is when it is on, you can actually take pictures, or the shutter will release when there's no card in the camera. And the danger of that is you might think you are shooting and you're taking photos. It will give you a preview and you shoot and you shoot and you shoot, and then afterwards you realize, oh, there was no card in the camera, and you've been shooting nothing. So it's safer to just keep this off, so that if there's no card in the camera, what will come up on your screen is just a warning that there is no card in the camera. Next thing that you might want to set is your white balance. Whilst you're still in the same menu, you might want to set your white balance. What this setting does is that it gives you a setting to adjust your colors based on the lighting environment. Generally, auto white balance works really well, but if for some reason you're not getting the results you want and there's a tinge of green or blue or something like that in your photos, then you might want to consider these other white balance settings like daylight, shade, cloudy, tungsten, fluorescent, flash to match your speed light, or even custom white balance where you actually set the white balance yourself. Or you can set a color temperature. So if you're using studio lights like I'm using right now, and they are set to a certain color temperature, you can actually match that color temperature with the camera color temperature. And getting your white balance correctly in camera is a really good idea, even though you can actually correct your white balance in software like Photoshop or Lightroom. The next thing you may want to do as you prepare to shoot is to choose your picture style. And there are presets on the camera for picture style, so whilst you're still in that fourth tab, you can go down to picture style and you can see all those picture styles that are available to you. So you can have auto, standard, portrait, landscape, and so on, but a lot of people just shoot in neutral or faithful, and then they do their color correction according to their creative vision in post. The other thing I would disable on this camera is the touch shutter. Now this EOS-R allows you to take a photo by just tapping on the LCD screen. So this feature is called touch shutter. Now to enable it and disable it, you just go to the camera tab, the fifth one, and right down there on the fourth one, that's touch shutter. I have it disabled because I use the screen a lot to select focus points and things like that, and it's very easy to just touch it and take a photo that's unwanted. So just disable touch shutter, but if you want to use it, just enable it there. The other thing you may want to set is silent shutter mode. So you go to tab 6 and there is silent shutter, and if you are in a quiet setting like you are in a concert or recital, you may want to enable so that you don't attract attention. The next thing you might want to do is decide whether you're going to shoot in autofocus mode or manual focus mode. Some lenses have a switch on the lens itself that you can switch to autofocus and manual focus, but if you want to control it from the camera, what you need to do is make sure that your lens is in autofocus first, and then you go into your menu, navigate to the AF, and then scroll all the way down on focus mode, and you can get manual or autofocus mode. There are other things that you can actually also make sure you change, like how the autofocus actually operates in AF operation. You can either have one shot where when you press down and the camera locks on focus, it stays focused on that subject as long as your shutter is half pressed, or you want servo where you are shooting moving subjects so that the camera can track your subject and keep shifting focus to keep your subject in focus. So this really depends on what you're shooting, and you can decide which one to use. So keep it on one shot. The next thing you can change is your autofocus method, and these are the different autofocus methods. Generally, if you are shooting people, you want it on face and tracking. That's the first one. But if you're going to be shooting anything else, then either use one point. This uses a single point to really hone in on the focus on that point, or you can use the expanded area where it will focus on one point but use the surrounding area for that one point to lock in on focus. And then you have these other focus modes which are wider. They take into account most of the frame when you are shooting. And so again, in this area, it depends what you are going to be shooting. So if you're doing portraits, then stay with face and tracking. In this menu, you can also have eye detection, and I keep that on because I shoot a lot of people, and as the name implies, it's going to look for eyes. You also have continuous autofocus, or I generally disable that, but continuous autofocus would be useful if you are shooting sports or things that are moving quite a lot. You want it to continually track your subject and keep focusing as your subject moves. So if you're having someone moving towards you, for example, you want that continuous autofocus to stay on so that it keeps your focus in. Okay, so those are the main items that you want to take care of before you start taking any photos. Once you're done, you are set and you're ready to take your photos. Now, just a point of note, all those menu items that we looked at can be quickly accessed by the Q or set button at the back of your camera. So when you press that Q button on the back of your camera, you'll see a lot of things that you can actually adjust. This is like a shortcut that you can use to make adjustments efficiently while you're shooting without going into your menu. Just press your Q and it brings up all these items like the AF method that we're talking about. That's the tutorial for today. We're going to be looking at setting up for shooting a video in the next tutorial as we go on this deep dive into the Canon EOS-R.